Good day, crofters. Good day, clansmen. Good day, lairds, ladies, and lime lovers. We're not in Yorkshire. We're not in Lancashire. We're on the west coast of Scotland. We're on the Isle of Mull. So we've been called upon to lend our services to a good friend of mine. So he runs a 5,000 acre estate on the south of Mull. Beautiful, absolutely resplendent, isn't it? That? So what we have, a little project, is so this is an 1850s granite built house up on Mull. So this has been like battered by the weather because we've got some beautiful, well, not clear, but the sun's been shining today, which is a rare thing. I think this is it's the end of March now. This is like the second day of the year that it's actually been sunny. So we've taken the opportunity to jump on this pointing job. We're using lime. This house has been absolutely sodden. When they've done some work on the insides, the walls are absolutely laden with moisture. No way that moisture can get out. So this was built in 1850, I think. This house, it's like coming up 200 years old. Yeah, that's right. The maths are right. And then the addition on the side of the house, what there was, where that greenhouse is, that was the school for this estate. So I think it opened in like the early 20th century, and it was just a tin shack. And the actual teacher that was there, she's only recently just passed, but luckily my friend's partner, she got to meet this woman. So she told us so many stories about the estate, about there's 50 families used to live here in the mid 20th century. Now there's 8 people live around here. But going back to the early 1800s, all the cliffs around here were filled with people, subsistence lifestyle, crofters, and they got kicked off in the clearances, formed a big estate, kicked all the people off, moved the sheep on. Times change, and now there's just deer around here really. So this is a stalking estate, but this house has been forgotten about. So the walls are absolutely laden with moisture. So we'll take a closer look and we'll see why they're laden with moisture. So originally it was built with lime, and the constituents for the mix, because obviously Travis Perkins, they wouldn't deliver around here. So everything to build this property was sourced from the local area. There's a big quarry on the hillside here, and there's a path going right along the estate. Oh, just a little, another little side note. So this is called Burnside Cottage, and if little look up there, isn't that beautiful? That. So that's so we call it a beck in Yorkshire, but because we're in Scotland, this is a burn. So this is Burnside Cottage. So yes, so the quarry is just down the way. I found out today that the stone, the granite and the basalt, this is all a volcanic region, was so good that they put a little railway line in down to the pier, and they shipped this stone all the way up to the Isle of Harris. And the person that told me about this quality stone has been to a church on the Isle of Harris, noticed that it was very similar stone, and then that has been shipped up to Harris, and they built a church from the Carsey granite. So that's quite impressive. So what we are working on here is granite. So all this stone is from the local region. This is like, I think a lot of the volcanic region around here started erupting like between, I think it was like 200 and 500 million years old. So this is super old stuff. So what they've done, they'll quarry this on site, and the banksmen will have worked into these coin stones and these big blocks of granite and basalt, solid stuff. And it's a completely different method of construction to what we have in Lancashire. Big blocks go in, and then they pack in between the joints with these little granite packers. And this lime mortar that's we get in the mortar pit. Some mortar out if we can. You see the black sand in there. So all the stone that's got into this mix is from down on the beach. So on that beach, it's all basalt. It's been ground down over millions of years. But you can't use beach sand in a lime mix because of the high salt content, which will interact with the actual calcium carbonate of the lime and degrade the mix. So what they'll have done is they'll have fetched all the sand up and they washed it, probably with the burn water, to get clean, salt-free sand, and then they mix that with the lime putty, and that's what they constructed the property with. So because it was pre-1880, they didn't use natural hydrated lime. So this has been original lime putty. In the natural hydrated lime, you get agrilicus deposits in the lime, so that's clays. So that adds to the water repellency performance of the mortar. So I presume the damp will have ingressed into the building with the use of the lime mortar. And some scoundrels come along and they've strap pointed this property with a lime and a cement mix. So it's a lot harder than the lime mix. And they've used similar sands, but with the addition of the cement, that stops the breathability and the performance of the mortar. So any moisture that gets in, or any micro cracks into this property, is staying inside, and that's what's happened. That's what made the property so damp. So what we're doing is we've taken all this mortar off and we're repointing it with a natural hydrated lime. So that's going to allow all the moisture that's locked into the cavity of this structure out, and it's going to dry this property out. Because on the inside they've had to stud everything out, insulate it, and put barrier tank the inside to try and stop this moisture from coming through. So what we know is we've broken this lower area out. So we came up in, so it's the end of March now, so we came up in November and we just broke out 6 foot right across the property, and that's allowed all the moisture, well, a lot of the moisture to run down through the lime putty and expel out. So that just that act alone of leaving it 3, 4, 5 months has dried the property out quite a bit, and then that's given us this perfect conditions to repoint it then. Because if we were to break all the mortar out and repoint it straight away, the moisture that's locked in the wall has to really slowly expel out of the property. So us breaking this bottom 6 foot of cement mortar off the wall has dried the property out and given the perfect conditions for us to repoint it. So have a look at the other side. This area that was broken out last summer. So when we came up in November, because Mull's hit by the Gulf Stream, so we get very mild winters on Mull. So we managed to lime point quite a bit of this property up back in November, but the belt broke on the mixer, so that stopped play for the time being, which isn't a problem if you're on the mainland. Just drive down to your local hardware store, get a new belt. But on Mull, that'll have taken 3 weeks to a month, which would have taken us into December. So the temperatures have dropped below 5 degrees at night, which would make it too cold to get the lime on. So we had to wait until spring. So we're back now, finished it off. So true to form, back then, we've got a load of, we'll show you the mix that we're using soon. But the constituents of this mix was 2 grit sand, and then we got on the driveway these bits of pink granite and some basalt. So we added that to the mix. So we paid homage to the original chaps who built this property, and we sourced them as much of the materials as we can from the local area. Now back then there's no limestone around here because it's a volcanic area, part of the Mull Triangle, the geological formation. It's all volcanic in this region, so there's no limestone. so they couldn't burn the limestone to create the slaked lime to make the construction materials. So what they did, they went down to the beach, pounded up the shells, because shells are calcium carbonate, pretty much exactly the same as limestone. Put them in the kiln, fire that to 900 degrees for quite an extended amount of time, and you end up with slaked lime. Add water to that, and then you got your lime putty then. So if you're near a beach or the shoreline, you can pretty much guarantee that the older properties were created that way. So you can see just off the 5 months that this natural hydrated lime mortar has been on the wall. You can see just how different, because it's cured now, and the active carbonations performed. And we'll just have a look. And you can see how the lime mortar is setting now to its final set and colour. There's bits of the granite there, bits of basalt. So this mortar, have a look here. So we've done this bit earlier this week. So you think, oh no, that's a terrible mix, a terrible match. It's pretty much exactly the same mix, but this is what it looks like just after application when we've scraped it off. So over the next 5 months, this fresh mortar will cure to the same colour as that. And you see the difference there. So this building, later on this late summer, we'll come back and we'll show you how we lime wash, because we're going to lime wash all this back to this nice white colour. So as we broke the mortar out of the joints, any loose bits of lime wash, because this is an original lime wash that's on the property, any flaky bits we've just broken off. So when we come back to lime wash it, we get a good adherence of the lime wash to the substrate. Right, so we shall show you what is in our mix. So we're up on the top deck now. We've already broken out the low, so we just left the last patch of the breaking out, just to show you how we go about it. So you can use hand tools if you haven't got a breaker available. Once we've broken out with the breaker, it is a very hard mix, is this. So we put lime, and there is some cement in it as well, which is a bit softer than if you just had a cement mix. But it does warrant us using the breaker, obviously, because there's a ferry to catch as well, so we're missing that. So we've got his PPE, got safety goggles on, snare defenders, get some gloves as well, but these arms are like leather, so we've got it at quite a low setting. If your breaker does have an adjustable setting, joints out. So once we've broken out this top coat of cementitious mortar, we'll show you how we break out the lime mortar behind. We're chasing it out. Right, so you saw us breaking out then. Because this is granite, this is an incredibly hard substrate. So if we had it on the hardest setting, it will bust that off, because the harder a stone is, the more brittle it is. So when we first came to breaking this wall out, we started in the lowest setting and worked our way up to an ideal setting. We don't want to be smashing the faces off these beautiful stones like they are for 200-year-old. So we've broken out the cement mortar and we're left with the original lime mortar. So have a look at this. So in that we've got the black river sand, and it looks like they use like a hot lime mix, because there's still bits of unworked lime in there. So with that not being a thoroughly mixed mortar mix, that'll reduce the water repellency of it. And because this is a constructional mortar, you don't really, it's two different kinds of like mortar that's used. So originally they'd have just finish pointed the substrate up with the same mix. Because these are unburnt lime, it will reduce the water repellency of it. So what we're doing now is we're applying the lime mortar with the NHL, so it's got them clays in it, to reduce the amount of water that can get into the property. So because we've broken out now, so what you want to be aiming for when you're pointing up is you want the joints to be twice as deep as the width of the joints. And the way that the masons built this, they're incredibly large joints, like that's about 1 inch there, 2 inches there. So we're going to have to dig these out quite deep. For that we're just using a simple mortar pick. You can use you can use a chisel, use whatever you want. Just as long as you can get them joints out nice and deep. So with the mortar pick, because it is a soft lime, we can just scrape it. So I'm scraping back into these joints here. And what you want to be getting, let's find a joint that can be there, we can explain it better with this. So you want nice, sharp, U-shaped joints, so when your mortar goes into the back of the joint, it's sat nice and square, you've got a solid bed. It's not like, how do you describe that? It's thoroughly penetrated and sat deep into the joint, like a nice rectangle. You don't want it like just toothed out. So a lot of the jobs that we come to, not particularly on this, because the builder, who's repointed it, has done quite a good job of raking the joints out first. But sometimes what you'll do is you'll just scrape the surface off the mortar, say like that. So what a lot of builders used to do, they just scrape it off and butter the mortar on top. That's terrible because the frost will get in there and just pop it off. So what you want is nice deep joints. You can see there, that's going in a good 2 inch, and the joint's 1 inch, so that's twice as deep as it is wide. Just straight the way along. This is the most important part of the process. It provides the longevity to the finished outcome of the job. So you go mad on that. Look that nice. Oh, it's a big lump of lime there. Look at that. That's all lime is that. So that's not doing anything to the water repellency aspect of the structure. So we'll rake all these out really hard. A bit more cement mortar there. You see how hard that is? So your mortar that you're using should never be as hard as the substrate, which is why lime's perfect, because you've got a soft mortar there. It's never going to be anywhere near as hard when it's finally cured as the substrate. So rake all them back. You can see the interesting building techniques there. So how this big block here has been put on, and they put this square in, and they just put little packers of granite in there, just to raise up. So he's got like his nice square finish there. With lime, you can't use big beds like you could do with a cement. It's not quite as forgiving as using a cement bed. Keep raking that out, like so. Got a lot of lime coming to the surface there. Surface of the joint, I should say. Rake all that out. Make sure them joints are nice rectangular joints there, so we can run the end of the pick around all our joints, like so. Got another piece of grit on it, bit of lime there, some more big chunks of that unslaked lime, slaked lime. What they seem to have done a lot on the west coast, and I guess I've seen it all other parts of the country too, is where your coin stones are. Just build them up a little bit on some slate. So all the slate from around here, because this is a volcanic region, there's no slate around here, but there's some isles on the west coast, very aptly named the Slate Isles. So there's a geological strata that came down. Found out yesterday, I forget where it's come from. It's the geological line. Where does it end up at? The Slate Isles. Somewhere. It comes from somewhere. So the Slate Isles are the only place on the west coast where you actually get slate. So there's millions of tons of slate quarried on the Slate Isles, and then that's gone off all over the west coast of Scotland to slate the roofs. And when you look at them, they're nothing like the slate that we have back home. They're a lot smaller and a lot thicker than the Welsh slate that we use on our roofs. It's a completely different roofing technique to get them on the roof. Something I don't know because I've never put any on. So I'm happy with how deep these joints have gone. These are almost ready for some mortar. So what you can use, the brush. You brush the joints out. Look at that. When you brush them out, you can see there how I've missed a load of lime mortar there. So what we want is our mortar to be sat on the stone. We don't want to be pointing on top of mortar, because that increases suction to the mortar that we're applying, and it'll make our mortar go off quicker and not cure properly. So because we have get that out, bit of a narrow joint there. What I can do there is I can get in with the finger trowel, I can rake that right back and get a good adhesion of mortar in that. Because this is the wonders of the modern age and we've got a big wall to do, we can use a blower. So I'll get this fired up. What that does is that it fully ensures that all the dust's completely out of the joint. See there, I've missed a little bit more. See, if I was just brushing it, I'd have missed this little bit. I prefer using that method of the blower because you don't have to pay for petrol. So these joints now, I'm happy with that and they're ready for some mortar. So what we'll do now is we'll go down and we'll see what constituents of the mix that we're using. Right, so this is our lime mix that we're using. It's a very coarse mix. It's way coarser than what we'd be using on sandstone. Back in the glory, the wonderful Shire of Yorkshire and Lancashire. Oh, I do miss that place. So this, trowel. Look how coarse that is. So because we've got super large joints on this mix, we've used a real coarse aggregate. Plus we get a lot of driving rain, there's a lot of salt. So I don't particularly want to put, I want a lot of stone in this because the stone gets affected by that driving salty wind a lot less than the lime would. You know, the lime might degrade, it might not. I'm not knowledgeable about salty wind, ain't no sailor. So this mix, once it's gone off, is mainly stone. So when the carbonation process is complete, we'll get the coarse aggregate, and all that lime will have turned back to calcium carbonate, so it'll be a solid mass of stone, if you will, in those joints. So in this mix, we have used 2 parts grit sand. It's like a blackish sort of sand. So ideally, when you're doing a lime mix, you want to try your hardest, especially on an old property like this, to do it justice by trying to match the existing mortar colour. So you see in there is quite a bit of black. There's bits of granite dust. There's some crushed brick in there, so that acts as a pots of lime. So we're using 2 parts grit sand, 1 part 15mm aggregate. So most people, you can't use that in a pointing mix. This is ideal for this mix that we're using. So there's all sorts of shapes there. We've got some long peak, that's like 20mm, is that, isn't it? 15mm down to like, what have we got? 2mm. So we've got a wide variety of stone sizes in our mix. So because we're using like a more sharp aggregate, there's very little chance that this mortar is going to crack or shrink when we've mixed it up thoroughly with our lime. So the grit sand, that acts as like a sharp particle in the mix. So the lime will bind the sharp sand with the aggregate. So and the lime that we are using, it's right in the bag. I'm not sponsored by Ionic, but I've used this brand for many years, and it's a superb quality lime. You get a nice even constituted mix, and we're using 3.5 lime, NHL, natural hydrated lime, 3.5. So in this lime, don't do this because you will probably burn your hands, but like I said, mine are made of leather. So what hydrated lime is it's already been slaked, and it has an addition of agrilicus clays in it. So the clays add to the waterproofing performance of the mortar. I'll wash my hands now. Don't want to be picking my nose with that, I'll burn it. So I've got another video on how to mix lime from scratch. There's many others on YouTube. There's quite a few different ways of mixing lime, but on the video that I've got on my channel, I've found that I get the best performance from the mortar. I've used it for that mix for many years. It's never done me wrong. So we'll fill his bucket and we'll go get some on the wall.